Welcome to AFRIMYTH Stories, where modern African tales come alive. Don't just watch, be part of the journey. Hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Now lean in, today's story begins. The sun blazed over the bustling town square, pouring heat onto the marketplace. Stalls of yams, peppers, fish, and cloth painted the air with color and scent. Voices rose in bargaining, children darted between tables, and laughter echoed here and there. But at the far end of the market, where shadows of an old palm tree stretched over a small wooden stall, sat Adiz, the banana seller no one quite understood. She was not old, yet her eyes carried years of silence. Her hands moved quickly as she arranged the ripened bananas in neat rows, always careful, always precise. To strangers, she seemed like any other hard-working woman. But to those who had watched her long enough, one thing stood out. Adiz never looked into mirrors, never touched shiny metal, never even allowed her stall to have glass bottles nearby. The market women whispered about it endlessly. "She fears her own face," one muttered, shaking her head as she tied a basket. "No," another cut in, voice hushed. "She's hiding something evil. You'll see." Adiz heard their whispers, but she never responded. Her lips pressed tightly, her back straight, her eyes always fixed on her bananas or the ground. She lived like a shadow in broad daylight, and the villagers had grown both curious and suspicious. That morning, as she packed her bananas into raffia trays, a small boy stumbled and fell in front of her stall. A broken shard of mirror slipped from his pocket, catching the sunlight. The piece spun on the dirt, glinting like a blade. Adiz froze. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. For a moment, her entire body stiffened as though chains bound her in place. Then, with a sharp gasp, she knocked over her tray of bananas, sending them rolling into the dust. "Take it away," she screamed, her voice raw and frantic. The boy, startled, snatched up the shard and ran off crying. The marketplace fell into silence. Every head turned toward Adiz. She stood trembling, her palms sweaty, her chest heaving, as though she had just escaped death. When she realized all eyes were on her, she gathered the fallen bananas with trembling hands, avoiding everyone's gaze. "What kind of woman fears her own reflection?" a fish seller said loudly. "Did you see her face?" "As if she saw a ghost," another added. The whispers swelled like rising smoke. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men muttered among themselves. To them, this was not ordinary fear. It was something darker, something unexplainable. But Adiz said nothing. She stuffed the bananas back into her tray, lowered her head, and continued selling as if nothing had happened. Still, her hands would not stop shaking, and sweat poured down her brow despite the shade. Somewhere in the crowd, a tall man in a plain shirt leaned against a wooden pole, watching her intently. His sharp eyes missed nothing. This was Detective Chike, sent to town for a case he could not yet speak of. And now, after what he had just seen, his interest was caught. For Adiz was no ordinary banana seller. And the mirror knew exactly why. The next day, the market stirred awake with its usual chaos. Roosters crowing, traders calling out prices, children chasing one another through narrow paths between stalls. Yet the memory of Adiz's outburst still lingered in hushed whispers. Women arranging peppers stole glances at her, and men sharpening cutlasses muttered under their breath. But Adiz herself sat stiffly at her stall, arranging bananas with unusual force, as if pressing her fear into each fruit. The lines under her eyes were deeper today. She had hardly slept, tossing through the night, replaying the gleam of that broken shard in her mind. Then came the sound of small feet, pattering quickly, playfully. The same boy from yesterday darted past her stall, clutching something wrapped in cloth. His laughter echoed, carefree. Adiz's eyes narrowed. The cloth slipped, and out rolled the very same shard of mirror. It slid across the ground, stopping just short of her bare toes. Her heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to obey. Her breath came fast, her palms itched. Slowly, against her own will, her gaze fell upon the shard. And there, within the splintered glass, was not her reflection. It was his. A man's face stared back at her, gaunt and shadowed. lips curled into a knowing grin. His eyes gleamed red, like embers in the night. It was the face of her late husband, the herbalist whose name no one dared speak aloud anymore. Adi's chest tightened. Her throat burned. She kicked the shard away, with a sharp cry, startling the boy. He scrambled to grab it, his small hands shaking now. "Mama, why do you fear a mirror?" he asked innocently, eyes wide. Adi's breath hitched. The market stilled again, ears straining to catch a reply. She shook her head violently, pushing the bananas aside. "Go. Leave this place," she shouted. The boy bolted, clutching the shard like forbidden treasure. His mother, a woman selling smoked fish, marched over furiously. "What did my child do to you, Adi's?" she demanded. "Keep him away from me," Adi snapped, her voice breaking. The woman spat on the ground. Which? That word stung sharper than any blade. And once it was spoken, the others began to murmur it too. Which, the word rippled through the crowd like poison. Adi's shook her head frantically, her chest rising and falling as though drowning in invisible waves. Her lips trembled, but she could not defend herself. Instead, she grabbed her raffia tray and fled the market, leaving the bananas scattered in the dirt. From a distance, Detective Chaik observed again, his eyes narrowing. He had seen fear in people before, but this was different. It wasn't fear of being caught. It was fear of being seen. As the market buzz resumed behind him, Chaik's jaw tightened. He had questions, and he knew the banana seller was at the center of them all. The marketplace was never short of noise, but this morning it carried a new edge, sharp, cutting, like knives wrapped in gossip. Traders leaned close over baskets of tomatoes. Women selling beans paused mid-scoop. Even men pounding yam lowered their pestles to whisper. All of them had only one subject, Adi's, the banana seller. She screamed at a child holding a mirror. One woman said, shaking her head. "No, not just that," another countered, adjusting her headscarf. "They say her husband was a herbalist, a dark one. When he died, his spirit clung to her." "Spirit? You mean she's possessed?" a younger girl gasped. Why else would a woman fear her own reflection? The words floated through the air, reaching every corner of the market. Adi's sat in her stall, hearing it although they spoke as if she were deaf. Her hands trembled as she peeled away rotten skins from overripe bananas, her ears burning with shame. She kept her head low, but the weight of 100 stares pressed heavily against her back. Children dared one another to run past her stall, chanting which, before darting away in squeals of laughter. Mothers dragged them back quickly, muttering prayers under their breath. Even customers who once bought from her now crossed to the other side of the road. For the first time, her bananas lay untouched. By noon, the gossip had taken on a life of its own. "I heard she sold her soul in exchange for wealth. But look at her, she has nothing." Exactly. She failed her bargain, and now she's cursed. Don't you see? The spirit in the mirror still hunts her. Every tale grew darker, more twisted than the last. Adi's pressed her hands to her ears, whispering to herself, "They don't know. They must never know." Her breath came uneven, her vision blurred. She longed to run again, but running only confirmed suspicion. So she sat, rigid, swallowing her terror as though it were poison. From the edge of the crowd, Detective Chaik watched carefully. Unlike the others, he wasn't content with rumors. His sharp mind pieced together fragments of truth. A husband, rituals, a woman too afraid to see her reflection. Something more than fear lived inside Adi's, and he intended to find out what. As the sun dipped lower, a cool breeze swept through the market. But instead of bringing relief, it carried whispers more chilling than the heat. "They should drive her out. She is bringing darkness here. Tonight, let us meet. We cannot live with a witch among us." Adi's felt it in her bones. The tide was turning. The whispers were no longer just words. They were seeds of action, waiting to grow. And as she packed up her unsold bananas in silence, she knew the wind carried more than rumors. It carried danger. The next morning, the market seemed quieter than usual, though it still hummed with life. Perhaps it was the whispers, or perhaps it was the shadow of something darker creeping into the hearts of the villagers. Adiz sat at her stall, her eyes sunken from lack of sleep. Her fingers toyed nervously with the raffia tray as if every sound made her flinch. She noticed the distance, the way people now walked around her instead of past her. Even those who dared to look her way quickly averted their eyes. But one pair of eyes lingered. A tall man in a plain shirt, his hair closely cropped, stood near the palm tree, surveying the market with the calm precision of a hawk. He wasn't there to buy yams or fish. His gaze was too calculating, too deliberate. Detective Chaik had finally stepped closer. He moved slowly, casually, pretending to browse at a pepper stall before strolling toward Adiz. She stiffened as his shadow fell across her bananas. "You sell these every day?" His voice was deep, steady, almost gentle. "Yes," Adiz replied, barely above a whisper. She kept her eyes on the bananas, not on him. He picked one up, rolling it in his palm. "And yet you've been the center of much talk." Her breath caught. She dared to glance at him. His eyes, sharp, piercing, searched her face as though trying to peel away every secret she had buried. "I don't know what you mean," she murmured, lowering her gaze again. Chaik leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Mirrors. You fear them. Why?" Adiz's fingers tightened on the tray. A chill ran through her spine. "It is not your concern." But Chaik did not move. His reflection stared at her from the dark tint of his sunglasses. And in that brief moment, Adiz saw something she could not explain. Her husband's face flickered there, red eyes gleaming, lips curled into a mocking smile. Adiz gasped, stumbling back. The bananas tumbled to the ground once again. Chaik frowned, but did not reach for her. Instead, he calmly placed the banana back on the tray and straightened. "We'll speak again," he said. Then he walked away, leaving Adiz trembling, clutching her chest as if her heart would burst through her ribs. The crowd had noticed. They watched silently, suspicion deepening. And Adiz knew this stranger was not like the others. He was watching her, hunting her truth. That night, Adiz could not sleep. The market's gossip echoed in her ears. But worse than that was the stranger's question, mirrors. Why had he asked her that? How could he know? Her small hut lay at the edge of the village, dimly lit by a single oil lamp. The walls were bare, save for one corner where an old wooden chest sat covered in cloth. She avoided that corner always, but tonight the air felt heavier around it, pressing her closer. Her breath came shallow as she slowly walked to the chest. Kneeling, she pulled the cloth aside, revealing a small cracked hand mirror. Its surface was dull, clouded with dust, but even so, her hands shook violently at the sight of it. Adiz hesitated, whispering prayers under her breath. Then, with trembling fingers, she lifted the mirror. For a moment, only her tired face looked back. The relief was sharp, fleeting. But then, the reflection rippled like water. Another face emerged. Her husband's face, gaunt, bloody, eyes burning with hatred. His lips moved though no sound came, yet Adiz heard him clearly inside her mind. "You cannot escape me." Adiz dropped the mirror with a cry, but it did not shatter. Instead, it rolled across the floor, stopping near the lamp. The reflection in it laughed soundlessly, mocking her, promising torment. She clutched her ears, rocking back and forth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Leave me," she begged. "Leave me." But the face in the mirror only smiled wider. Outside, the night wind carried whispers through the trees. Inside, Adiz's hut became a prison, her own reflection her greatest curse. And somewhere in the distance, Detective Chaik walked the village paths, notebook in hand, his mind restless. He was closer now, closer than anyone else had ever been, to discovering what haunted the banana seller. But he had no idea how dark the truth really was. The market was restless the following morning. A storm of whispers had already begun before the sun climbed fully into the sky. A young girl, Ngozi, no older than 16, had vanished the night before. She had last been seen at a D's stall buying bananas for her sick mother. By midday, the girl's family stormed the market, their grief raw and untamed. "Where's my daughter?" her father bellowed, eyes bloodshot. His voice boomed across the square, silencing trade. The crowd shifted, and every gaze fell on Adiz. She froze under the weight of their stares, her throat dry, her heart thundering. She tried to speak, but her words tangled in her chest. "She was with you last," a woman accused, pointing a trembling finger. Adiz shook her head frantically. I only sold her bananas." But the girl's mother wailed, clutching her wrapper. "The witch took her." Shouts erupted. Men shouted for justice, women muttered curses, children hid behind their mothers' skirts. The market that once buzzed with trade now seethed with suspicion and rage. Adiz stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face. "I did nothing," she cried. But the memory clawed at her mind. Ngozi's reflection in a puddle that evening, a fleeting moment where another face, her husband's face, had stared back. The villagers surged closer, some brandishing sticks. Before the crowd could close in, Detective Chaik stepped forward. His voice cut sharp and commanding. "Enough." The mob froze. Chaik's eyes bore into Adiz, not with anger, but with cold calculation. He saw her trembling, saw the guilt etched in her face, but also something deeper: terror. "This matter will not be settled with chaos," he said firmly. "I will find the girl. Until then, no one touches her." The villagers grumbled, but his authority held. Still, Adiz knew. In their eyes, she was already guilty. And somewhere, hidden in the silence of night, the mirror knew what had become of Ngozi. The afternoon sun baked the earth, yet Adiz felt only cold. She sat in her stall, motionless, while the market cautiously returned to its rhythm. But each passing villager gave her a look, some of pity, most of disgust. Detective Chaik returned, his presence heavy. He leaned on her stall casually, but his voice was sharp. "Tell me about the girl," he said. Adiz swallowed hard. "She bought bananas and left. That is all." Chaik adjusted his sunglasses, tilting them slightly as he studied her. The dark tint caught her reflection, and her breath hitched. For in his lenses she saw not herself, but her husband's shadow staring back. Adiz gasped, stumbling backward. Chaik frowned, watching her eyes dart in panic. He had seen criminals tremble, liars break under pressure, but this was different. Her fear was not of being accused. It was of something unseen, something within. He removed his glasses slowly, revealing his steady gaze. "What do you see?" he asked softly. Adiz shook her head violently. "Nothing. Nothing at all." But her trembling betrayed her. Chaik's instinct screamed that her secret was bound to mirrors. He scribbled in his notebook, muttering to himself, "Haunted eyes." Adiz collapsed back onto her stool, clutching her head. The whispers in the marketplace resumed, louder now, fueled by the detective's presence. Somewhere deep inside, she knew, every glance at her reflection was pulling her closer to the truth she had spent years running from. That night, Adiz's memories returned unbidden. Dreams clawed at her, dragging her into the past. Years ago, she had been a different woman. Young, hopeful, newly married to Obina, a herbalist known across villages. At first, his knowledge of roots and charms had seemed like wisdom. He healed the sick, guided the desperate. But slowly, Adiz saw the cracks. He whispered to mirrors in the dead of night. He covered reflective bowls with cloth. He forbade Adiz from touching glass. Then the killings began. Young women disappeared from nearby villages, their families left shattered. Whispers pointed to Obina, but no proof ever surfaced. Adiz had confronted him once, trembling. "What are you doing with those mirrors?" His laugh had been cold. "Not mirrors, Adiz. Gateways." That night she had seen it, his ritual. A mirror propped against the wall, candles flickering. In the reflection, Obina's face twisted into something monstrous, his voice echoing in tongues no human should speak. And then his death. The ritual had gone wrong. Flames, smoke, a scream that shook the walls. His body burned, but when the fire cleared, the mirror still stood, cracked but unbroken. Adiz had fled, carrying the cursed shard with her, burying her past. But she could never bury the fear. Now, sitting alone in her hut, tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "Obina, why won't you let me go?" And in the cracked mirror on her floor, His reflection smiled. By morning, the market had transformed from a place of trade into a storm of rage. The disappearance of young Ngozi was no longer just grief. It was fire in the villagers' veins. The girl's family returned, this time with men carrying sticks, cutlasses, and kerosene lamps. They marched straight to Adi's stall. "There she is," the mother screamed, pointing a trembling hand. "The witch who took my daughter." The crowd surged forward. Some overturned her trays, bananas spilling into the dust. Others hurled stones at her feet. Adi's heart thundered as she raised her hands in defense. "I did nothing," she cried, her voice breaking. "I swear it on my life." But her words fell on deaf ears. The villagers shouted in unison, "Witch! Murderer! Drive her out!" A stone struck her shoulder, and she stumbled. Another whizzed past her ear. The mob pressed closer, faces twisted in fury. Suddenly, the air shimmered. In the shiny blade of a cutlass, Adi saw his face again, her dead husband Obinna, grinning with blood dripping from his mouth. She screamed, dropping to her knees, clutching her head. The crowd roared louder, mistaking her terror for guilt. Just as the mob surged forward, Detective Chaik forced his way through, pistol raised to the sky. The crack of his gunshot silenced the market instantly. "Enough," he thundered. His presence commanded obedience. Even the angriest froze. He glared at the villagers. "If anyone lays a hand on her, you answer to me." The mob grumbled, but his authority held. Adiz collapsed, sobbing, as Chaik pulled her to her feet. For the first time, he saw her not as a suspect, but as a prisoner of something unseen. And he knew the villagers' rage would not cool. This was only the beginning. That night, Adiz sat trembling in her hut, the villagers' chants echoing in her ears. She thought of Ngozi, of the cutlass reflection, of Obinna's face. Her hands trembled as she uncovered the cracked mirror again. She wanted to smash it, to bury it, to end her torment. But as she lifted it, the surface rippled, pulling her gaze in. This time, Obinna's reflection was clearer than ever. His eyes glowed like burning coals. His lips curved into a chilling smile. And then he spoke. "You cannot run, Adiz." The words echoed in her skull, though his mouth barely moved. She staggered back, clutching her chest. "Why are you doing this?" she wept. "Why torment me? Why the children?" Obinna's reflection tilted its head mockingly. "Their souls feed me. And you carry me. You are my vessel." "No," she screamed, hurling the mirror across the room. It clattered against the wall, but did not break. Instead, laughter spilled out, low and guttural, filling the hut. Adiz clutched her ears, rocking back and forth. Tears soaked her cheeks as the mirror whispered over and over. "They will never forgive you. They will never free you. You are mine." And in the silence between sobs, Adiz began to wonder, was he right? Detective Chaik was restless. He had spent the night combing through old case files in the village archives. Faded ink, brittle paper, whispers of the past, stories of young women vanishing years ago, all tied to one man, Obinna, the herbalist, and Obinna's wife, Adiz. His brow furrowed as he pieced it together. Obinna had died mysteriously, but no body was ever buried. Only whispers of fire, smoke, and mirrors remained. Chaik left the archives with questions pressing against his mind. He needed answers directly from Adiz. When he reached her hut, he found the door ajar. Inside, Adiz sat hunched, her hands over her ears, muttering to herself. On the floor lay the cracked mirror, its surface glowing faintly in the lamplight. Chaik stepped closer, his boots crunching on the dirt. The glow caught his eye, and before he realized it, he was staring into the mirror. And he saw not Adiz. He saw himself. But in the reflection, his throat was slashed, blood pouring down his chest. His eyes were hollow, lifeless. He staggered back, heart racing. The mirror flickered again, showing only his own determined face. Adiz lifted her head, tears streaming. "You see too," she whispered hoarsely. Chaik's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. But inside, he knew. This was no superstition. This was no village rumor. Something lived in that mirror, and it wanted blood. Detective Chike could not shake what he had seen in the cracked mirror, his reflection dying before his eyes. It was too real to dismiss as imagination. That night, he returned to the archives with a lantern, determined to dig deeper. Old case files were stacked in dust-laden boxes. He rifled through until he found the one he was looking for, Obinna, the herbalist. The file was thin, almost deliberately incomplete. But what was there chilled him. Witness accounts from years ago spoke of young women vanishing after visiting Obinna. Strange rituals, midnight chanting, mirrors placed in circles. Villagers had accused him of consuming souls, but no one could prove it. The final entry was scrawled in haste. House fire. Body never found. Mirror recovered, cracked but unbroken. Wife fled. Chike closed the file slowly. So it was true. Adi's fear of mirrors wasn't madness, it was survival. But survival from what? A curse? A spirit? Or something even worse? As he stepped outside, the moonlight hit a puddle on the ground. He froze. In its still water, his own reflection stared back, except it blinked when he hadn't. Chike staggered back, his breath quickening. He wiped the puddle with his boot, breaking the reflection. But the feeling stayed with him, the sense that something or someone was watching him now. The case was no longer just about a missing girl. It was about a mirror that should never have survived. And Chike knew he was running out of time. Adi's nightmares worsened. Each time she closed her eyes, she heard Obinna's laughter echoing in the dark. She saw Ngozi's face, pale and lifeless, staring at her through glassy eyes. When she awoke, the cracked mirror was glowing again. She tried to turn it away, but it pulled her in. This time, Obinna's reflection was clearer than ever, his voice a low, venomous hiss. "You think you are innocent," he mocked. "Every soul I claim, I take through you." Adi's blood ran cold. "No, you're lying. I never." "Liar." His laughter shook the glass. "Each child that vanishes, each spirit that feeds me, their last reflection is through your eyes. You are my vessel, my doorway. Without you, I am nothing. With you, I am eternal." Adi screamed, dropping the mirror. It clattered, but did not break. She crawled backward, shaking her head violently. "No, you won't have me." But deep inside, she knew. This was why she feared mirrors, not just because of him, but because they revealed the truth. She was bound to him. Her soul was no longer hers alone. And every time someone disappeared, blood was on her hands. Detective Chike's investigation led him beyond the village, into the forest, where the trees grew thick and shadows lingered even in daylight. Guided by an old hunter who claimed to have seen Obinna's rituals long ago, Chike pressed deeper until he reached a clearing. There it was, a shrine of stones arranged in a circle, charred candles, skulls half buried in the soil, and in the center, resting on a carved altar, another mirror, larger than Adi's shard, its surface spiderwebbed with cracks, yet glowing faintly. Chike's stomach tightened. He stepped closer, notebook forgotten in his hand. The glass shimmered, rippling like disturbed water. For a brief second, his own face stared back. Then it shifted, bloodied, lifeless. The same vision from Adi's hut. A voice whispered from the mirror, low and taunting. "You think you can stop me, detective?" Chike stumbled back, pistol drawn. His heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to remain steady. This was no superstition. This was real. Obinna's spirit was alive, bound to mirrors, feeding on souls. And Adi's, the banana seller, was the unwilling vessel keeping him tethered. As the wind howled through the trees, Chike realized the truth. This was not just about saving Adi's. It was about saving the entire village. Because if the mirror's curse was not broken soon, more would vanish. And next time, it could be him. Adi's hut was suffocating. The cracked mirror on the floor pulsed faintly, like a heart beating in the dark. She dared not touch it, but its whispers slithered into her ears all the same. "You belong to me, Adi's. Without me, you are nothing." She covered her ears, rocking back and forth, but the voice grew louder, vibrating through the very walls. The lamp flickered. shadows twisting like claws. Her late husband's face appeared again, not just in the mirror, but in the sheen of a lamp's glass, in the basin of water by the door, in the polished blade she used to cut banana stalks. His grin spread wider each time. "Your soul is mine," he hissed. A Dee screamed, hurling the blade across the room. It clattered uselessly, but the reflection still lingered on its surface, mocking her. At that moment, Detective Chaik barged into the hut. He saw her trembling on the floor, eyes wild, hair clinging to her damp face. And he saw the mirror glowing. "What is this thing?" he demanded, stepping closer. "Don't look," Adiz cried. "It will show you death." But Chaik, stubborn, leaned down, and again saw himself bleeding, lifeless. He tore his gaze away, chest heaving. He holstered his pistol, forcing his mind to stay steady. "This mirror, it is the key," he muttered. Adiz grabbed his arm desperately. "No. If you break it, the spirit will not die. It will only scatter. It will find another way." Her voice cracked, her eyes wide with terror. And Chaik realized this was not just a curse on Adiz. This was a curse on the entire village. The next day, the market boiled with fury. The disappearance of Ngozi had sparked something uncontrollable. The villagers gathered not to trade, but to destroy. "Burn her stall," one man roared. "She brings death to us all." Torches lit the air, fire dancing on every face twisted in rage. The mob surged toward Adiz's corner. She stood frozen as men doused her wooden stall with kerosene. "No," she cried, clutching her chest. "I beg you, I am not what you think." But the crowd roared louder. "Witch! Curse-bearer! Let the fire cleanse her!" The torches fell, and flames roared to life, consuming the stall in seconds. Smoke billowed, bananas hissed, and split in the fire. Adiz fell to her knees, coughing, tears streaming as she watched the life she had clung to turn into ash. And then it happened. In the fire's reflection on broken bottles scattered nearby, Obina's face appeared again, laughing. His laughter echoed through the crackling flames, chilling every soul present. Some villagers stumbled back in terror, crossing themselves. Others screamed, convinced the fire itself had turned against them. Detective Chaik rushed forward, dragging Adiz away from the blaze. "If we don't end this, they'll tear you apart," he shouted. But Adiz shook her head weakly. "No, it's not me they must fear. It's him." And as the flames roared higher, even Chaik felt it, the presence of something beyond flesh watching them all. That night, Chaik made his decision. The mirror had to be confronted, not hidden, not feared, but faced head-on. He gathered a few trusted men, whispering his plan. They would lure Adiz and the cursed mirror to the shrine in the forest, where Obina's spirit first took root. There, in front of the villagers, he would force the truth into the open. Adiz trembled as she listened. "You don't understand. He won't just show you illusions. He will fight you. He will twist your mind until you cannot tell truth from death." Chaik's jaw tightened. "Then I'll fight back." With reluctant steps, Adiz agreed. Together, they carried the cracked mirror through the night, the villagers following with fearful eyes and whispered prayers. When they reached the shrine, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The larger mirror still sat on its altar, glowing faintly. As Chaik set Adiz's shard beside it, both began to pulse with light, sinking like two beating hearts. The ground trembled. The air grew heavy. And then, a voice thundered through the clearing. "You dare challenge me?" The villagers cried out, some fleeing, others clutching each other. From the mirrors, Obina's reflection emerged, sharper than ever, his eyes burning with malice. Chaik raised his pistol, but kept his voice steady. "You cannot hide behind glass forever." The reflection laughed, deep and cruel. "Glass is not my prison. It is my kingdom." And as the villagers watched in horror, Obina began to step out of the mirror. The forest clearing was thick with fear. The villagers clung to each other, wide-eyed as the cracked mirrors pulsed with light. From within their fractured surfaces, Obina's reflection grew clearer, taller, stronger, until his shadowy form began pressing against the glass as though it were a doorway. Adiz screamed, clutching her head. "He's coming through. Stop him." Detective Chike raised his pistol and fired. The bullet shattered against the glass, but instead of breaking, the mirror rippled, swallowing the shot whole. Obina's laughter thundered across the clearing. "Bullets cannot kill the dead, detective." The reflection surged again, and Obina stepped halfway out of the mirror, his body a blend of smoke and flesh, his blood-red eyes fixed on Adiz. "My vessel," he hissed. "Return to me." Adiz stumbled back, her voice breaking. "No, I am not yours." But in her heart, she felt the pull, the invisible chain binding her soul to his. Her knees buckled, her chest heaving, as if her very spirit were being dragged into the mirror. Chike rushed forward, grabbing her shoulders. "Fight him, Adiz. You are stronger than his curse." Obina's shadow raised a smoky hand, and Chike was flung backward into the dirt. The villagers wailed, some dropping to their knees, praying desperately. The reflection sneered. "She cannot fight me. She is me." And as Adiz's trembling hand stretched toward the mirror against her will, the final battle began. The ground shook as Obina's full form began to emerge from the mirror, smoke solidifying into flesh. The villagers scattered to the edges of the shrine, screaming. Adiz felt her body move against her will, dragged forward like a puppet. Her hand pressed against the cracked glass. In an instant, her reflection warped. Half her face, half Obina's, twisted together. "No," she screamed, fighting to pull away. "I am not you." Obina's voice roared through her mind. "You are mine, Adiz. You always were." Chike staggered to his feet, bruised but unbroken. His eyes darted to the ground. Stones, torches, shards of broken glass. An idea struck. "Villagers," he shouted, "do not fear him, reflect him." Confused but desperate, the people lifted what they could, pots of water, polished blades, fragments of glass. All around the shrine, reflections shimmered, multiplying Obina's image 100-fold. The spirit howled, twisting violently as the mirrors trapped him from every side. His power, once focused, now splintered. Chike grabbed a heavy stone and hurled it at the cracked mirror. Adiz screamed as the glass shattered into 1,000 pieces. The clearing erupted with a deafening wail. Obina's form split apart, dissolving into smoke and ash. His laughter twisted into a scream of rage before vanishing into silence. The air stilled. The mirrors lay shattered. Adiz collapsed, gasping, her body trembling. For the first time in years, her reflection was gone. Not stolen, not twisted, gone. The curse was broken. Or so it seemed. The villagers slowly returned to the clearing, eyes wide, breaths shallow. They stared at Adiz, no longer with rage, but with fear and uncertainty. She knelt in the dirt, broken mirror shards glittering around her like fallen stars. Detective Chike helped her up. "It's over," he said, though his voice held little conviction. Adiz's tears streamed freely. She whispered, "I am free," but her voice trembled, as if she did not fully believe it. The villagers muttered among themselves. Some wanted her gone, afraid of what lingered. Others pitied her, seeing her as a woman cursed against her will. No one dared come too close. As dawn broke, Adiz stood at the edge of the clearing. In the soft light, she dared to glance at a puddle near her feet. For a moment, only her face stared back, tired, tear-stained, human. But then, just faintly, the corner of the reflection's lips curved upward in a grin that was not hers. Adiz staggered back, heart hammering. She squeezed her eyes shut, whispering, "No, not again." Behind her, the villagers whispered nervously. Chike's eyes narrowed, his hand tightening on his pistol. He had seen it too. The curse was broken, but not destroyed. And as the morning sun rose, one truth remained. The mirror still knew who the banana seller really was. Loved the story? Don't just watch, like, subscribe, and be part of the AFRIPULSE family. Your support keeps the tales alive. See you in the next one.